Ready to level up in 2025? Tune into Branding with Bex for insightful conversations, captivating guests, and practical tips. Whether you're on a walk, in the car, or getting ready in the morning, grab your headphones and let's dive into the world of branding together. Thank you so much for being on the show for a second time. I am so excited to have this conversation with you and for you to join us on another season of Branding with Bex. Let's take the audience back and provide a little background if they are new here. Can you tell us a little bit about you, where you live now, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Corley. I'm originally from Florida. I was born and raised in Florida, spent pretty much my whole life there, and now I live in a little tiny Amish town in Kentucky, of all places. But yeah, I am in, as far as like what I do, I'm in remote sales. I do a couple different things with like website development and social media marketing companies. So yeah, my background, last time I was here, I had a business. I actually sold that business to essentially pay for the down payment on my house, which was great. It was a great vehicle to get here. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Awesome. And when you decided to make such a big move in your life, and like you mentioned, there was a big change as well, I would say, a bit of a little transformation, switching from being a business owner to now doing remote sales and then also to living in a totally new place. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you lived, and then why you decided to take that leap from Florida to a new location?
Yeah, for sure. Pretty much like the majority of my life I spent in Central Florida. I was, raised in Orlando area. I was actually born in Miami, but I didn't spend any time in Miami. My parents made that move pretty quickly to Central Florida. So I grew up there, and then when I met my now husband, he spent some time in Orlando with me, and then he's originally from Fort Myers, so we made the move to Fort Myers and spent about 4 years there. We really didn't have plans like to leave Florida like for a while. Like we wanted to like buy a house there and like, settle down in maybe like a smaller town in Florida, but things just like didn't work out that way just for like numerous reasons. Like, COVID happened obviously and things just got really crazy. Like we were actually under contract to build a house in a small town like near Fort Myers area, and I can't quite remember like what had happened, but basically like with all the building costs that had gone up, we were kind of like priced out of the market. So we decided like, back to the drawing board from there. We looked at all sorts of different areas like in Florida, like North Florida, on the other coast, just different areas. And we weren't too like crazy about just like a couple things. Like the job market wasn't great for like his position. The pay wasn't too great, and it was just becoming so populated, like just the state as a whole. Like we just kind of wanted to like a more quiet life
Yeah.
and to get away from the hustle and bustle. So originally we had wanted to move to Tennessee. We both have friends in Tennessee, and we've heard great things about it. Towards, I think it was the end of 2022, we made a trip to Tennessee, to check out the area. And unfortunately, like with our budget, like we were kind of priced out of like, the areas that we wanted to move into Tennessee as well. So literally on our last day that we were visiting and kind of house hunting, we were just like stumbling upon this tiny little area in Kentucky. It was like 40 minutes away from the area we were looking at in Tennessee, and we just kind of fell in love with it. Like the houses were beautiful. It was a really cute, like quiet area. So we didn't make any moves at that point, but we just kind of like went back home and we're like, oh, okay, well, it is what it is. We'll kind of think about it and like
Right.
brainstorm from there. So that's kind of like, that portion of the story. And then what was your other question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think everything really ends up working out for a reason, and you fall into a certain place. At least that's kind of how it happened for me. I was like, okay, I feel really trapped in New Jersey. I feel like it's time for me to move on to somewhere else where I think I could be outside more. I could do a lot of things that I enjoy doing. And it just felt like the right place, right time, I guess. And that was ready to make the leap. I remember you and I have been friends for quite a few years now. And I actually remember like DMing back and forth when you first went to go check out Tennessee. And I've been to Nashville area, which I know is really nice. But again, that's such a populated area. Like so many people I feel like flooded into Nashville recently. And then I know we were talking about that a little bit, but it seems like your spot in Kentucky was one that you kind of just stumbled upon and ended up being a great fit. So after you visited, you said you came back and you took some time to kind of think about it. You didn't make that move right away, but when and why did you decide to say, okay, we're going to take the leap and move to this new location?
Yeah, so I guess the when happened like after we got home, like we were kind of visiting with my parents after we got back before we went back to Fort Myers. And I was just like, you know what, let me just contact the builder, just to kind of see what they have to say. Um, and this was probably like the day after. I was like, just screw it, let's just try it. And so the builder actually got back to me like within 10 minutes, and he sent me like this huge personalized like 15-minute long video about like who they are, what they do, like about the houses, the area, like all this stuff. It's super personable, and it wasn't just like a pre-recorded video. It was like he specifically made it for me and my husband, and I was like,
That
wow,
is
like,
so,
yeah, I was
that's
super
not common.
impressed. I was like, who does this? I thought it was like AI. I was like, no one does this, not that fast. So I was like, okay, wow. And so I should back up a little bit. Like when we were here, the neighborhood we had actually stumbled upon, it's in kind of like our same development, but it was actually done by a different builder. So the builder that I had contacted didn't build the houses that we had actually found.
Oh,
But he said, they're very similar. So I was like, okay. So they were building like this whole new development of like 90 homes, in the neighborhood that we live in now. And so essentially, like when we moved here, it was pretty much sight unseen. So we didn't really check out the area. We just kind of saw like the houses that they didn't build across the street. And we're just kind of going like off of his word. But as far as just like when and kind of like why we decided to make that leap. I mean, the builder's personality was a big like deciding factor for us. Like they made everything like super, they were just super thorough, like gave us all the details, answered any questions that we had. They like through the whole process, they were there for us the whole time. But I guess we didn't really like, it wasn't like this pivotal moment where we're like, okay, like we're going to Kentucky. I was just like, it just started out with getting some more information, and it just kind of fell into place there. We were just like, hey, let's try it. Like we were kind of at that point where we were thinking, what other choice do we have? Like, where else are we going to go? Because, as you know, the housing market just like shot up, and we were gradually being priced out of like every area that we were potentially thinking about. Um, but the houses here super affordable. The job market is, pretty good for a small town actually. So yeah, it just kind of fell into place after that. Like it wasn't a final decision until we actually like put a deposit down on the house to build it, and then, the rest kind of went from there.
it can move really fast, and then you're just kind of doing like putting one foot in front of the other, taking it like step by step, and then before you know it, you're like, wait a minute, I'm moving. That was kind of what happened. I came down once to visit. I was like, oh, there's this place if you want to come see it. I went to see it, checked it out. I was like, okay, I like it. Placed the offer that night. I got accepted the next morning. So it just kind of when it works, it works, and I think that it works out for a reason. So initially, when you were thinking about making that move, did you feel totally ready, or were you scared at all? Were you excited? Like, what kind of emotions did you have? And also, a big thing I feel like that comes into play, especially when I talk to some of my friends that are contemplating moving themselves, it is any sort of input from friends and family. So, did you guys have experienced that as well when you were, especially leaving Florida, where your family, and I'm not sure if your husband's family is from Florida, but I know you have family here. So,
Yeah, yeah, pretty much, everything we had known is in Florida, our family, our friends, like everybody. So, I mean, as far as like the feelings that kind of went into it, it was such a blur. Like we were ready, but also like we kept going back and forth. Like
mhm.
every day, like, is this the right decision? Like, are we really doing this? Like, we're moving to Kentucky. Like, what are we doing? And it was a lot of like uncertainty. We were excited, yes, because like we were building our own house. We weren't just like buying something existing. So that was like a really exciting part for both of us. Like, we could make everything like exactly what we wanted.
Right.
Picking out the floor plan and all of that. So like there was excitement that really went into like the building process, and like again, like our builders made it super seamless and easy. Like a lot of people that I talk to who have built homes, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the most stressful thing
Yeah,
in my life. But
I heard a
it
lot of
wasn't.
stories.
Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't stressful for us really at all. Like it was kind of stressful knowing like, okay, the clock is ticking, like we have to get things in order. But yeah, I mean, as far as like family and friends and input from them, everyone, as far as I remember, was pretty supportive. I mean, people had questions for us, like, what are you guys going to do about the job? Like, this and that, things like that. Overall, like, people were pretty supportive. Like, no one was really saying, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're making a mistake or anything like that. So that was nice because I know, like, when you have outside voices like that, sometimes it can really like put a lot of doubt in your mind, and you're like, oh my gosh, like we were already kind of doubting it. So I feel like if we were to have anybody else who was like, what are you guys doing? We would have probably maybe not have made it here. So
Yeah,
yeah.
if there's something you know that you want, like this big move, I feel like it's so important just to put your blinders on and to like focus on what you're doing. Not everybody's going to understand your journey and where you're going to go. I think that kind of applies to a lot of aspects of life. There were even just doing this podcast, there's a lot of people that are like, why is she doing this? What is she doing? Guess what? Sorry if you don't get it, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway. Just like when I moved to Florida, what is she doing moving to Florida? I'm going to do it anyway. Like, you have to just kind of go for it if you feel like you have a gut feeling that this is the right move for you. But I know it can be hard, especially when you're leaving like family and friends. Like, I think that just you have to, if you feel like you know you need to be somewhere else, it's important to make that move and to go there. After you decided to make the big move, I know moving is like a lot. It's a lot of, you don't realize how much stuff you have until you move, honestly. That's something that I was like, why do I have all these things? So the moving process is a lot. But after you got there, how did you feel once you were settled in? Were you like, okay, this is the right decision. I'm so glad we did it? Or did you have any feelings of like, wow, I'm overwhelmed? Like, what was that like?
It was a lot. Yeah, it was definitely a lot. Like the moving process. We actually even ended up throwing away like a lot of our belongings. I would say probably like 75 to 80% of our stuff we threw away because just like as a background, which you know this, but like we were living in a condo that was completely infested with mold. And so we were like, we cannot bring this stuff. Um,
Starting fresh, new start.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was really nice just to kind of be like, okay, like I'm just clearing the slate. Like I'm getting rid of the stuff. Like there's no sense to having an attachment to it because like when I think about the stuff that I had, I'm like, this stuff could potentially like make me sick. So it makes me happy to like be rid of all that stuff. But once we got here, it was like a fresh of breath air. We're like, oh my gosh, like this is our house. Like I look back at a video that I took when we first got here and we were seeing the house for the very first time. Like I said, it was sight unseen. We hadn't made any trips to see the house when it was under construction or anything. So all we had to go by was pictures and videos from the builder. So we were just like walking in, we're like, oh my gosh, like this is our house. Like, and especially as first time home buyers too, where it was just like this surreal moment of like kind of like you're dreaming or like this isn't real or like this is temporary or like whatever those feelings are. But as far as like being overwhelmed, I mean it was a little overwhelming just kind of like getting settled because when we moved here pretty much right after like an hour after we pulled in the U-Haul in the driveway, it started snowing like crazy, and so we had to get all of our stuff in before it started snowing, and or before it got like really bad, I should say. But it was nice. We just kind of like took our time with like unloading everything, like getting everything how we wanted it. Both of our families helped us a lot with just like, whatever you guys need, like we'll help you and that sort of thing. So we had a lot of support from family, and also like it was nice that we had our wedding, or we got married, we kind of eloped. We had a courthouse wedding, but we had all these wedding gifts that our families really helped us out with, which is just like new stuff for the house. So that was like all I could ever ask for, just to start fresh and take our time, which we did. So it was really nice.
So when you were planning out your house, and were there specific things like I know we talked about you had the mold in your old condo. Were there things you looked for? And we can be a little crunchy here. So were there things you looked for when you were house hunting that you were like, this is definitely something that we need, or this is like the type of walls or paint or airflow that you were looking for, or what were you looking for when you were house hunting?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, I would love to have like one of those holistic built houses where, like everything is, non-toxic or low tox, I should say. But unfortunately, that wasn't really the case. I mean, they were just using the standard materials. But I think the big thing for us was just like when we were house hunting, like we were open to buying an existing home, but if we were to do that, I just know that we were going to run into things that like, could potentially be issues. Like, we could potentially run into mold again, or, buy a fixer upper, whatever the case may be. But we really, really did want a new construction home so we could build it, exactly how we wanted it. And even though we weren't here for the building process, um, just those updates again from like the builder and showing us like, from the studs, like how everything is being built. So we know like what the house looks like on the inside, like how it was built, who was building it and all that sort of stuff. So new construction was really nice. Yeah. And like obviously I know with new construction you can have mold too, but the season that we were building in, like they were building in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't really rainy season, so I wasn't really, worried about mold growth or anything like that. But yeah, I guess like the things that I was just looking for in a house was just, open concept. Like we wanted it to be like spacious enough for the two of us. Like it's just me and my husband, and we don't have children. We have our cats and our animals,
Yeah.
but we just wanted it to be like enough room for us. Like we wanted it to be like modern, and like honestly, after throwing away our stuff, like we just wanted it to be very minimal. Like the less stuff that we have to take care of, the better. So, it's perfect for us. Like there's not anything that we need to fix with it. Like everything's energy efficient and new. We don't have to worry about things like breaking down on us. So that again, it was just like a huge relief, for us as well.
I think that takes the stress off too. I definitely feel like it's probably helpful to have that like new fresh start in a new place and a new house. So very
Yes.
exciting. If you could offer any advice to someone who is looking to move to a new state, what would it be?
I would say just really do your research. I feel like we probably didn't do enough research before we moved here. Like we thought we did. We thought we were super thorough and we're like, oh yeah, like it's a small town, but like, hey, there's a butcher right down the street where we can buy our meat or, things like that. Like, oh, there's all these little diners and stuff. And then when we got here, we're like, oh, this isn't like high quality basically. Like it wasn't up to like the quality that we were used to, because like when we lived in our condo we essentially had Whole Foods in our backyard, and then we moved here and it's like the only grocery stores that they have are like Walmart and Kroger and Meijer, which
Mhm.
there's still a variety of high quality like organic stuff that we can get there, of course. I would just say like do your research, like find out what's around you, like look at a map, like see how you would like potentially plan your day-to-day life. Also a big thing here was we didn't look into like the taxes enough. Like we didn't know like essentially your tax like 20% of your paycheck here, which is a huge jump from going from Florida, which has less taxes.
Right.
um, so taxes are a big one. And honestly, just kind of like, if you have to find a job in a new place, like do your research there too. Like call around to these people, like find out what their wages are, like if they're hiring, if they're gonna be potentially hiring when you're looking to move and that sort of thing. Um, and honestly, like if you can, like talk to your future potential neighbors. Like if you're looking in a neighborhood, like see if you can talk to people who already live there and see what the area is like, especially if you can't be there all the time or even a few times to like scope out the area yourself.
Right.
It's always nice to get like, other people's recommendations or, their story about the area.
Yeah, that's a when I first moved to Florida, one of my neighbors sent me like 10 paragraphs of her favorite places to go. And that was really helpful once you start to see exactly what your day-to-day life would be and picture yourself there. Especially as you're, making a big change like this, to say like, okay, well, it's just day by day. Just got to worry about like my daily routine and like how you can incorporate that into your new setting.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I did see one of your posts on Instagram, and as we wrap up this podcast, I wanted to ask you where our listeners can follow you online. However, I think you might be taking a step back from the online space, or maybe posting things a little bit differently. So if you could just elaborate on that a little bit, if you want anybody to find you, where you could like to find you.
Yeah, no, I don't mind if people find me. Like I was actually just kind of like going back and forth with this past week. Like I really do want to get back into, the online space. Like I just have the entrepreneurial kind of DNA. But right now I just have my personal page is Hey Corley. It's just Hey and then my name, Corley. So yeah, people can follow me there for just like, personal stuff every day. But I also have my pet account where
Yes.
I run my cat page, which we're trying to get into the UGC creator kind of space. So that's
Your
like my
cats are
business
crushing
page.
it. The
Yeah,
content.
thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Banks is a big fan. Let me tell
Aw.
you.
We love it. But yeah, I mean, that's really it right now. We'll kind of see, like, if I start another business, I kind of have that itch again. So if I do, I'll, I'll post on either of my pages there. But for now, it's just me and my cats.
All right, that sounds great. And if you do decide to start your business, please let me know because I will definitely include it on our podcast and let all our listeners know about your new journey. Thank you so much for joining us again for another episode. I think this will be super helpful, whether they're looking to move across the country to a new state, wherever it may be. And I think it's just great to kind of talk about what it's really like. And I'm not as big and scary as people play it out to be. I know when we talked about the input, I was just thinking about how people were like, wait, what? You're going to move all the way to Florida from New Jersey? And I'm like, it's a 2.5 hour flight. All right. Like, it's not that far away. You got to make the move if you feel like you're ready to make the move. I don't know if everybody actually will feel 100% ready, but if you feel like you should, I think it's a good time to go for it. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And you're welcome back anytime.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to kind of chat a little bit and talk about a fun topic. So I'm excited to listen.